Truth. Un, 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 Unforbidden. Truth. Podcast.
Welcome to another True Crime Show and Tell. I have here with me Murderabilia collector Nathan Matthews. How you doing today, Nathan?
Howdy, how's it going?
It's going. Today I
Got my
wanted to
Jeffrey
talk
Dahmer
about.
mug.
Oh, that's awesome.
Looking like a snack, Andrew.
Today I wanted to talk about press photos, and we're gonna have Nathan show a couple. But before we do, I wanted to talk about Murderabilia, and I'm always interested in how certain collectors got into collecting. So, do you want to tell the story of how you got into collecting Murderabilia, or even when you first learned about what Murderabilia was, for that matter?
Yeah, sure. I've always kind of been a collector. I started collecting antiques. I've been collecting antiques for 15 years, and it kind of snowballed into different things as I just kind of got bored. So I've always loved Halloween. Like I've always been interested in spooky, scary stuff. So then I started collecting oddities, and I'm like, oh, I need like some serial killer stuff for my oddity collection. And I was only supposed to get like two or three things, and things got out of hand, as you can see. I ended up creating an entire corner called my serial killer cafe. I got a little plaque here, and I just come here, drink coffee, and look at all the serial killer art and letters and all that stuff. So that's kind of just how I got into it. Is just by sheer accident and slight obsession. So
How
yeah.
long have you been collecting for now?
I I didn't do it seriously until like maybe mid 2020. So I started like 19ish, and I kind of missed the boat on a lot of really great stuff, but I still managed, I guess.
Right, right. Yeah, I started
Yeah,
in 2010 when a lot of people were still alive, like Ramirez and Bobby
yeah,
Joe Long and a lot of
yeah.
the
You got to talk to
golden age
some
guys, so to
really
speak.
Yeah, you got to talk to some really great people. I know that you were like talking to Ramirez. I heard your story about you like the first time you got a phone call from him on a bus, and it's like phone
Yeah,
call
yeah.
from Richard Ramirez, and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, I was trying real hard to, talk quiet because
Yeah,
not a whole lot of people at Job Corps knew what I did, and I didn't want to be the weird kid, but it
yeah,
eventually came out and I was the weird kid.
yeah, yeah. That made you the interesting kid though too.
Right, right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, one day I got called up to the security office because I had sent probably like 20 letters out. Manson's name was in there, Ramirez, and they're like, "Is there something you would like to tell us?" And I'm like, "No, not really. I
Jeez.
mean, I'm just corresponding with serial killers and murderers. I mean, what's the
Like,
big deal?"
please, yeah, yeah. Don't mind me. Like, I'm just, just having a good time over here.
Right. Um, so today I wanted to talk about press photos, and I know you
Yeah,
have quite a bit of them pulled out to the side. Can you
yeah.
talk about what exactly a press photo is and like what its purpose serves? I know a lot of people see them on eBay from time to time, but don't really
Mhm.
know what one is or what its purpose serves.
Well, typically a press photo is like when the media would come to like any kind of courtroom case, or if there's any kind of like situation with like an event, they'll go and the reporters will take the photos, and then they'll kind of sort through them and see which ones they want to print. So the press photos are just the ones that they're thinking about printing in numerous papers or media outlets, and they'll like cut them down and edit them. Like some of them I have like where they have like little notes of how they want to edit the photo for the newspapers. And then what they'll do is sometimes they'll fax those edits to other papers, and those are what are called wire photos. And they're a little bit grainier, and they have the general information usually on like on the photo for the other media outlets. But typically that's what they are. And like some of the original press photos, they'll just have a glued on piece of paper of the actual description on the back of those photos.
Now, are they usually like one of a kind, or do they print multiple ones of the same like original photo?
Well, like the original ones, there's usually like a very limited run of them, and they'll do a couple different variants and different edits of it. And then, like I said, sometimes they'll do like the first generation run of the wire photos, and then they'll just go from there. Sometimes they'll print out a bunch of them, depending on like how big the news story is or how many people even are interested in it. So it really depends. Like the Manson stuff, like I know that was like nonstop for like probably like 2 years. So there's probably an insane amount of like original Manson press photos because there was just so many photos taken of that case. Not to say they're not rare. At this point they are hard to find.
Yeah, I know in the past few weeks there was a bunch of Manson photos that popped up, press photos on eBay, and they were going for like a couple $100 a piece, and it looked like an entire collection of them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they go for like from what I've seen, like between 100 to like sometimes upwards is $500 on eBay, which is kind of crazy. But I don't know, somebody's out there buying them. Apparently, I just got a whole bunch of them myself recently. It's probably the last bunch that I'm gonna get because I'm not like super interested in that case, but it's a very iconic case, so I have to have like just a few things from it.
Yeah,
Like
I've
I
never
got
really been interested in press photos like collecting or selling, but it's also like I'm not really interested in newspapers or books or anything like that. But I know there's different collectors for different like subgenres of murderabilia and stuff, which I'm not knocking it by any means. They're certainly interesting
yeah.
and cool, but it's like a almost like collecting stamps. Like you got to have a knack for it.
Right, right. Well, like with that, the only reason I got into it, because at first I started with the letters and the art and all that stuff. And I remember thinking, I'm like, there's certain cases that I can't afford certain things from. They're just impossibly expensive. And then there's other cases you can't find anything from. And I'm like, okay, I want like a smorgasbord of like different cases. Like I wanted like a good, solid general collection. I'm like, the only way I'm going to be able to get certain cases is through press photos. Like, that's it. Because I'm never going to find like cases where like the people just killed themselves, before the court hearing or any of that other stuff. Like Harold Shipman. Like, what are you going to find of Harold Shipman? Like, like press photo, probably. Maybe some paperwork, but or Jack Unterwagner. Like, he killed himself before his court appearance. So it's like there's not really anything that you can find other than his books. So press photos are like kind of just like the second best thing for me. That's the only reason I got into it because I'm like, yeah, there's certain things I'm not going to spend like I don't know, like $10,000 on, just for the collection anyway.
Right, right. Yeah, murderabilia can definitely be an expensive hobby. I mean, you
Yeah.
can get stuff as cheap as $5 or as expensive as $100,000. I mean, it just depends on really
Right.
what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
for sure.
so you have a couple press photos pulled out. Do you want to pull some out and talk a little bit about each one?
Yeah. Let me show you one of my favorite cases, and a lot of people overlook this one, but I think it's absolutely wild, and it's probably one of the most brutal murder cases in the last century. It's called the Cleveland Torso Murders. You probably heard of it from 1934 to like 1938. There was like this killer in Cleveland, Ohio. He was killing vagrants. He was leaving people's body parts all over the city. Like you'd have just people scattered about, and random people would just walk up on these like limbs, heads, torsos. The guy was just butchering people and scattering them around. And they coined the name the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. And they even brought in Elliot Ness, the dude responsible for catching Al Capone, putting him away for at least a little while. And he came in and he couldn't solve the case. He cleaned up some of the corruption in Cleveland, but that's pretty much all he did. So this is an unsolved murder case. And this dude, I think they said that he killed like 13 people, but they suspect it could have been in upwards of 40. And he was transient too. So we'd use the railroads, and he would go to all these different like counties and different states. And there's a bunch of cases that are connecting him to different states, even as far as California. So this is one press photo right here, and it's the police looking at the only evidence that they actually found. It's a newspaper. Well, actually, I'll just read it. And the back of it is, see, it's got the little taped on there, and it's got a little description. It says the sixth victim of the fiend killer found. The sixth victim of the human butcher who beheads those he murders was uncovered with the finding of the torso of a white man, sliced in two with the skill that was marked each of the other slayings. And the pool of Kingsbury Run, sorry, it's hard to read because it's like the text is really old. Cleveland, Ohio, on September 10th, police who continued search for the other portions of the victim's body frankly declared that the latest killings were the work of the same mysterious fiend credited with the gruesome murder of 4 men and women, 3 of them in the same Kingsbury Run area in the past 2 years. Here, police are examining the only clue to the fiendish crime, a blood-stained shirt wrapped in newspaper, dated September 8th, 1936. And that's just them looking at the only evidence that they've found so far in that case. And a lot of times they would they'd find the body parts wrapped in like newspaper or cloth, and it would just be like random body parts of people. So that's one of them. And then this is actually a year after the killing stopped. This is the only suspect they ever had. Frank Dozier. This is the arrest photo of him, and this is the original press photo. I have like several of these, and it's got the little sticker on the back describing like the actual press photo. But yeah, this is Frank Dozier, confessed torso slayer, and the shown, or was Frank Dozier, confessed torso slayer, is shown before his assets under lie detector test in the East Cleveland police station yesterday, that the head of Miss Francis, number 3 torso victim, was buried near the new Lakefront Road. Let's see. Yeah, and it's just describing the people that are in the photo, the detectives underneath it. So it's just kind of just saying like he's the suspect, and he's actually being booked for one of the murders, and it's only mainly because he lived with one of the victims. So he lived in one of the victims, and he knew 2 of the other ones, and that was the only reason he was ever put under any suspicion, or he was booked. But sadly, before he had his trial, he hung himself in prison from a hook that was 1 inch shorter than himself. And after they actually did an autopsy, he had several broken ribs. So they definitely beat the shit out of him, got a confession, and then pretty much killed him before he could have like a fair trial. So it's a really crazy case. It goes all over the place. I got several of them. I think I got 13 press photos from that case because it's like one of my favorite cases. This is another one of him just kind of sitting there looking all creepy and weird. And then I got oh yeah, here's the heads. They made plaster casts of some of the victims for the museum just so they can try to identify them, because like the vast majority of them were unidentified. So that was just in hopes of like finding out who they were, which I don't think that they ever did, unfortunately. So.
That case is still cold, other than like a few homicides that were linked to him, huh?
Yeah, they never had really any evidence. Elliot Ness had like a secret suspect, which was this doctor. I think his name was Francis Sweeney, but he didn't want to implicate him because, like, I guess his cousin was like a congressman, so it might have ruined his career, like if he actually accused this guy without any actual evidence. But it said that like him and a couple other detectives, like they actually kidnapped him and took him to a hotel and gave him a lie detector test. And the dude came out and said like that is 100% like your culprit, like that's definitely the murderer. But they couldn't do anything with that, so he ended up just leaving, having the secret suspect that he was fairly confident was the Mad Butcher. So yeah, it's a really interesting case. And then that Francis Sweeney guy, shortly after that, he checked himself into a mental institution. So it's like even if they wanted to get to him, they couldn't. Like he was already part of the mental institution, and he did it willingly, so he could check himself in and out whenever he wanted.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty clever on his part too. So yeah, but that's the Cleveland torso murder case, and then I have a few other cases. I don't know if you like angels of death, but I have 3 different angels of death here. Janine Jones. Yeah, she's really interesting. She's really cool in the sense that like Stephen King's book Misery is based off of her. Like Annie Wilkes, that plays the crazy homicidal character in Misery. Like her character is based off Janine Jones. And she is responsible for upwards of like 60 infant deaths, I believe, something like that, right? So that's an interesting one.
If I'm not mistaken, with Janine Jones, a few years ago, she was about to be paroled or up for parole, right? And they were trying to stick new cases on her. Is that right?
Oh, I'm not sure. Like I didn't hear that, but
I
that's
remember it being
interesting.
like a big deal in Texas that she was up for parole and they were trying to stick old cases on her and whatnot because nobody wanted her to get out of prison.
Right, yeah, because she at that point, how many deaths did she have on her? Like when she was in there, like how many convictions did she actually have?
I honestly think it was a couple, but she was suspected of, upwards of so many, like all Angel of Deaths are, like they say
Right,
hundreds of
yeah,
thousands of deaths or
yeah, yeah. I think like online it says like they think she's responsible for like at least 60 infant deaths, but I mean, like it could be less, could be more, who knows? But that's an interesting one because I just like the fact that her character is based off of her, and I had learned that recently. I'm like, oh man, that's just really interesting.
oh,
And
that's
then we
crazy. I never
have,
knew that.
yeah, like I was surprised. Like somebody, I think it told me that. I'm like, oh really? I'm like, that makes sense because it is heavily suggested in Misery that her character Annie Wilkes or whatever her name is, like was a former nurse and she had killed infants. So it was like kind of suggested that she may have been a serial killer in that movie, which makes it even more terrifying that he's in that position. So then I got good old fashioned Donald Harvey. I'm sure everybody knows him. I don't know a lot about his case, so I don't know if maybe you want to fill some people in. I know he's just an angel of death and he killed what, like maybe 60, 70 possibly. So
Yeah, I'm not too up and up on his case, but I want to say he was in Ohio, wasn't he?
yeah, Cincinnati, Ohio is what it says.
Yeah, I
Drake
have a few
Hospital.
letters from him, but I really don't know much about his case other than he was an angel of death and he had passed away
Yeah,
in prison. I think he was doing multiple life sentences, right?
yeah, I think so. And then like this is the press of like America's Most Wanted. Like they're doing an interview on him. Like apparently for this press photo is the only reason it was released. But yeah, they did this. I want to say I'm assuming in the, yeah 93. That's what it's dated. 1993. They're doing an interview with Donald Harvey, Angel of Death, and then I have the ultimate angel of death, which I'm sure we all are familiar with now, Harold Shipman. Good old fashioned Harold. this guy is what allegedly the world's most prolific serial killer at this point, like confirmed. I don't know a whole lot about his case either, but I know that he was killing like most of his patients. Like they were all elderly, as far as I know. Some of them were younger. There might have been like a kid or two, and I think some of them like he was like inserting himself into their wills, which like for one, if you're doing that, it's kind of a no-no because people are probably going to catch on to that. But I would imagine after you killed like over 200 people, you probably stop caring whether you're going to get caught.
Right.
He's just like, fuck it. Like, at this point, I'm fine. But this on the back says, and this is like during the investigations too. So at this point, they just have him clocked at like 116 bodies in this press photo. Whereas I know that number has increased to at least over 200, 250 or something, some crazy number like that. So that's another Angel of Death. That's my Angel of Death collection. I have others, but those are clearly like the top three there for sure. And oh yeah, here's one of Harold Shipman getting arrested. That's like his arrest press photo. Getting put in the van. Same backing where it says he's responsible for 116. So that's an interesting one. And then let's see, I got, what else do I got? Oh, everybody's familiar with Jonestown. There's the bucket of death, I forgot exactly what poison they used. Was it like cyanide and something else?
Yeah, I believe so. The cyanide Kool-Aid or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess that's the punch bucket of death. I remember this one was on Time magazine, right? Like the actual photo was on Time magazine.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's a lot of.
So would that one be like a high resolution copy of an original one then?
I don't have any of the original Jonestown ones.
Okay, so that's like a first generation copy, you would call it then, probably.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, or like the Jonestowns ones. Like, when did that happen? Like 70s?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I believe like any of the ones that probably came out of the 70s were probably like original, like first generation ones. Like these ones were maybe from like a story or something they were doing in the 90s. Yeah, this one's a little brutal right here. But yeah, that's a lot of bodies. And yeah, this one is, I think, dated 90. Oh yeah, it has the date 78 is when it happened. So Jonestown tragedy, 78. Yeah, these were released in the 90s. These particular press photos, but they're super graphic. Like this next one is very graphic. That's why I got it, because I'm like, Jesus, like it's like you see the dog in the background, like even the dog is killed over on the bridge. I'm like, Christ, like that's absolutely brutal. Because a lot of people don't see like the close-ups of like that tragedy. You just see the mass of bodies like when you actually like look into that case. But when you look at like the personal photos of like, like these people just killed over, and it's just, geez, it's horrific. I think it was over 900 people or something, right?
Right. Yeah, and the ones that refused to drink the Kool-Aid were shot and killed, and it was
or forced
probably one of the worst like mass suicides of all time, like in world's history, I would think.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrendous. And can you imagine this guy right here walking in on that, just the smell, because it's blazing hot jungle, like these people are swollen, like packed full of drugs. Like I can't even imagine like the sight of horror that was.
Yeah, I can't imagine either. That would probably be a smell you would probably never get rid of in your nostrils, just because it's like, how do you get rid of that stench?
Right, yeah, it's like the stench of death that just stays with you forever. Like, like that's a rough one for sure. And let's see. Oh, here's one of my favorite cases. So the Black Dahlia murder. So there's Elizabeth Short, and this is the only press photo I have with her actual photo because it's insanely hard to find anything, even for sale, that would have her photo. But this is not original. This is one that was released when the movie was released. The girl that's the actress that's playing her here, it's just making the comparison. But Who is the Black Dahlia was the movie that was released. And I think it was released in the 60s or the 70s, maybe. And this is the likeliness of Elizabeth Short that's playing her in the movie. I've never seen the movie. I have no idea like if it's even worth seeing, but that's one press photo from that. And then I do actually have an original press photo of the Black Dahlia, and it's of one of the suspects, one of the main suspects. This right here is, his name is Robert Manley, and he was one of the suspects that I believe they thought that he might have murdered her because he was like possibly the last person to see her. I think he had dropped her off at like one of the locations, like one of the bars that she was like last seen at. But this photo is like his girlfriend is like comforting him. See, like this is the back of it. 1947. It says, booked on suspicion in the slaying of Elizabeth Short, whose severed body was found in a vacant lot in Los Angeles, California. Robert Manley, former Army musician, is comforted by his wife, Harriet. So, January 20th, 1947. So that's the original one. I have 3 or 4 original press photos of the Black Dahlia. And then I have just that one of her photo that's probably like, I don't know, like I think from the 60s, 70s or something like that. So that's one of my favorite cases. And anybody who knows true crime knows about the Black Dahlia murder and like, you know, like the whole case. It's just one of the most gruesome murders to ever take place probably in the last century that people can recall. I mean, her severed body was just in 2 different sections on this vacant lot. And it was just, nobody had ever seen anything like that when they came up on that. And then they found out, you know, it was Elizabeth Short, and it was just like this big deal. Like she was like this up and comer, and you know, she was getting around Hollywood. She was hoping to become a movie star, I guess, but didn't work out that way, I guess. So let's see. Oh, yeah, this is an older case. A lot of people don't know about it. This is Jake Bird. Have you ever heard of Jake Bird?
Jake Bird. It sounds familiar.
He was a, let's see what the date is, 48. He was a axe murderer, roughly around like the 30s and 40s. And Jake Bird, apparently he was going around these different counties and like just, you know, casually murdering people with an axe. I know, to his discretion, like whenever he felt like doing it. But anyway, this is him in custody, and they're questioning him. That's the information on the back, and it just kind of says, basically, Pierce County prosecutor Patrick M. Steele left is shown at Washington State Prison at Walla Walla with Jake Bird. During questioning of the former transient about a long series of slayings in the West and Midwest, Under Sheriff Joseph Capatch of Tacoma previously reported Bird had admitted committing or participating in 10 killings besides the 2 at Tacoma. That brought his death sentence. So they nailed him for 10 killings because he had admitted to participating or killing 10. And then, let's see. And then Bird said that after that is settled, he can clear up 10 more. So at this point, in the press photo, he's committing, or he's admitting 20 murders right then and there. And after doing some research online, they actually suspect him of doing like roughly like around 40, like just generally within that area. And then it says, the last part of it says he is scheduled to hang January 16th. So as far as I know, I do believe he was hung. Because I mean, he was nailed for at least 20 murders. So I'd be very surprised if they did not hang him at that point. Especially,
right, yeah, especially back in the day when death sentences were carried out like super quick.
Right, yeah, like you kill your wife and then boom, like death sentence. Like you're going to hang, or you're gonna fry. Like it was just crazy. Like there's so many cases where like the death sentence was carried out because like somebody like killed their wife or the girlfriend, you know, like you kill one person, like first degree murder, and like you're done back then. Like they just did not give a shit. They're just like, nah, we don't need you in society. Like you can go.
Right,
And
especially dating back to the early 18 and 1900s, especially, you know, dating back way to the Salem witch trial days where you were found guilty and they killed you right away. Like nowadays, at least you have an appeal process and everything to prove if you might be innocent.
yeah, they give people a chance nowadays, whereas back then they're just like they were real quick to accuse people, and especially without like significant evidence. They're just like, yeah, you know what, like we just think you did it, like we don't really need to prove it, and we don't really care about you, so like, you know, we're gonna do this because we can. And they did. A lot of people didn't question. They're like, oh, like he might have killed this person, okay, well then yeah, just, you know, do away with them. Like, it's just wild back then, you know. They were
Right,
just
judge, jury, and
killing
executioner all
killing
in one.
people willy nilly. You know, they like, I can't even imagine how many innocent people actually died. But oh, here's one of my favorite cases: Jack Unterwagner. Um, Everybody knows that he stayed at the Cecil Hotel, and the same hotel Richard Ramirez stayed at. You know, when he was doing his killings. I do recall like he was hired to be a reporter and go there and report on those killings, or some kind of killings that were happening at the time. And then I remember he stayed at the Cecil Hotel, and during his stay there, I think he was responsible for killing about 3 prostitutes. But Jack Unterwagner, he was in prison for murder. And he was supposed to probably just stay there for the rest of his life, but he ended up writing this incredible book, which apparently like turned a lot of people's heads. They're like, oh yeah, like this book clearly shows that he's reformed. So like all of these like high class people like kind of rallied for his release. They're like, yeah, let's release this guy. He's definitely reformed. Like it shows it right here in the book, and he's so intelligent, so articulate. And they released this dude, and he's wandering around. And shortly after they release him, he starts killing prostitutes because that's just what Jack Unterwagner wanted to do. So he got out, started killing prostitutes, and I believe he killed upwards of like 9 prostitutes before they actually caught wind that it was him. And they finally brought him in, and then this is the photo of like the trial, and it just says that 43-year-old Jack Unterwagner stares blindly at the courtroom scene as he prepares to face charges concerning the grisly killings of 9 prostitutes who were strangled with their own underwear. At the first proceeding in Austria City, 20 April. And I believe this was 1991, 1992 is when he had committed a lot of those murders. But yeah, he was a really interesting and fascinating case because a lot of people are unaware of him. And he was such a big deal because he was, I think he was like a bestseller for a long time. Like people were like eager to read his book. Like it was just like wherever it was. I think it was it Germany? I'm not really sure. Might have been Germany, but it was like people really wanted to read it because like he was very articulate, but very arrogant too. And that's a really interesting case because it kind of connects like Richard Ramirez and the Cecil and Jack Wagner, and it's like kind of like this pit of despair and like downtown Los Angeles that kind of just sucks people in, and just kind of like a place where serial killers hang out, you know, because Cecil Hotel was also connected to Elizabeth Short, where people said that like one of the last places that they saw her was at the bar at the Cecil. So it's like you have these cases that are all interconnected, you know, they're just like really fascinating. And let's see. Oh, we could do this one. This is a press photo related to the Zodiac. I don't know if you could see the Zodiac there. You see that? I know.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the press photo is just related to a shooting that had happened. It was like maybe a week after the cabbie that was killed by the Zodiac, and I think it was like 49. It just says driver Charles Jarman, 28, is near death as a result of his holdup shooting early 1st 25th, similar to the last known slaying by the Zodiac. A psychopath who has bragged of 8 killings and been definitely linked to 5. Jarman was shot about a mile from where cabbie Paul Stan was slain last September 11. In the latter crime, Zodiac ripped a chunk of Stan's shirt and mailed pieces of the blood-stained cloth to the police and newspapers with notes bragging about the killings. So this is literally the only thing I could ever find related to the Zodiac was this press photo. But it's really interesting because it talks about like when that crime happened, like just like a week prior to, you know, that famous case where like he actually killed the cabbie and wiped the cab, you know, ripped the shirt off. It's just cool that it shows all that detail, you know, in that photo, which is very interesting. Yeah.
I think press photos are pretty interesting. It gets to shine a light on cases that there's really nothing out there to collect from, you know, like Albert Fish and, you know, super old case like Blackbeard and so on and so forth. And
yeah,
so it opens up like a little market and little collection of itself that you can't really get things from that are out there, or that aren't out there, like, I should say.
Yeah, exactly. Like your favorite cases could be older cases. Like your favorite case could be Albert Fish, and like God knows you're not going to find anything from Albert Fish unless you're going to spend, I don't know, like $10,000 to $20,000 on it, maybe. But if you're lucky, you can find a press photo on eBay for, I don't know, a couple $100, and then there you go. You have like a piece of your favorite case. Like with me, like the Black Dahlia case, I'm like, oh, that's really fascinating and interesting. I'm like, I want something from that, but I'm never going to find anything unless it's like press related. So like that's kind of the silver lining with press photos. Like they're interesting, like in the sense that like you can only get like older cases, you know, like in that form. Whereas like with all of this stuff, like the letters and the art, like I feel like personally that's cooler to own that because that came right from the source, you know, like this came from the actual criminal that like created like this dark history, you know, like because I feel like in a sense like we're all sort of historians or just kind of fascinated by like this dark history that happened. We want to go back and kind of just like see how everything played out. Like it's, and it probably goes back to the whole Scooby-Doo days where we want to like try to solve mysteries and shit like that too. It's like, oh yeah, let's try to solve this mystery. Maybe there's more here than meets the eye kind of thing. So that's what I kind of like about it.
Right.
Do you want to see some others or
yeah, for sure.
Okay. Let's see. Ooh, this is another older case. I think this is maybe England. Okay. So this is John Regional Christie. Have you heard of him? think that's his name, right?
I don't believe so. No.
He he was a killer right around the time that Ed Gein was. I think he was like right before Ed Gein's time in England, and he was similarly brutal as Ed Gein. He had bodies in his house, decomposing different parts of them. Um, think of him as like an older version as Dennis Nielsen, basically, except like in the 50s. And this is him being a little bald man being escorted into the police vehicle. And this is the back of it right here. Very long, drawn out, but it says, they called his house like the horror house because there was just so many bodies under the floorboards and in the kitchen, just crammed in corners. Like this guy just did not care. He just had a house littered with his victims. But London's horror house suspect goes to court. London, England, Balding John Regional Christie, object of one of Britain's greatest manhunts until a bobby picked him up in the street yesterday, is shown leaving the police van that brought him to West London Police Court today for his first hearings in connection with the murder of his wife and the suspicion that he killed 5 other women. 6 bodies were found hidden in the house called Horror House. In London Notting Hill section, police are seeking other victims at the place where Christie resided previously. Police say that the mild-mannered clerk made a long statement after his arrest, but did not reveal what the statement contained. And then it's just saying there'll be further hearings with him. But that's a really interesting older case too. That happened, I believe, during the 50s. 53 is when it happened. So this happened before even Ed Gein. But he's one of England's more famous older cases. And he was a brutal killer. Like I don't exactly know the details of how he killed them. He might have strangled some of them. He might have like stabbed some of them. But it was said that he was very mentally unstable too. It was a very brutal and interesting case, but I surprisingly don't know a whole lot about it. Like I said, I just had the press photo because it's like you'll probably never find anything from that case. So, and then and then I have Satan himself, Mr. Manson. So this one right here, this is an original Manson press photo. This has got like the actual backing to it and everything. It's got a little description. I think it even describes him as being Satan himself. Charles Manson, 35, leader of the hippie cult Satan's Slaves, who, with others, will face trial on murder and conspiracy charges over the killings of Sharon Tate and the actress, or of Sharon Tate, the actress, and 6 other people. Just saying that he's being escorted like to the prison right there. And this is an original one. You can actually, it's kind of cool. You can see like the editing that they did to section off the photo for the newspaper. So they actually, what they'll do is they'll just use markers or whatever to just kind of see exactly how they want to put it into the paper. We'll edit it. And then here's another one of him. So this much clearer photo.
Yeah, that's so crazy. It doesn't even look like him.
Yeah, he just shaved his head. It's like there's so many different like versions of Charlie. Like you got like the old man Charlie. It's got like the beard that you're like kind of growing out there, but it's just kind of scruffy.
Right, that'll always be the Manson in my mind. The old man Manson, you know.
Old man Manson. Yeah, Billy Goat Manson, pretty much, with the crazy long stringy hair. Kind of looks like Medusa. Yeah, like a lot of people don't recognize this one, like where he shaved his head, you know, and he's just I don't even remember when that was. I think the date on this is 71. So 2 years, year and a half after the actual murders. And then I love this one because this is the older one that we know. Hold on, let me pull that out. So, and this I believe is 93. So this is when they're like just doing random interviews with them. For what reason, I don't know. Probably because just Manson's interesting and he's just a wild man. Like if you ever read any of his letters, like he's very articulate and then he just like kind of talks in circles.
Right.
So it's like it's so crazy. Like he's so intelligent, but then like when he tries to make a point, sometimes the point doesn't go anywhere and he just kind of like trails off. It's like he has like the ultimate form of like ADHD or something. Like he just like he gets to a point where it's like, oh wow, like that's beautiful, and then it just trails off into nothingness. But then you got what's his name? Forgot what that guy's name. He was a famous reporter.
Oh
geez. It's
yeah,
on here
his
somewhere.
name is escaping me, but I remember the photo.
Gerardo Rivieras.
Geraldo.
Yeah, Gerardo Rivieras. Yeah. That dude interviewed so many criminals. Like I think he even had like his own show where like he was like it was like a true crime show or something like that, and he was interviewing criminals, especially criminals like Manson. Just asking random questions like, hey, why are you crazy? Why'd you kill all those people? And the man was like, bro, I don't know. Like, what do you expect from me? So
right.
And it even says, look, a little newspaper says Satan. It just says Satan on the back of this. Like that's all it says. Manson, Satan. I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. Oh yeah, and just a random little Manson frowning. Look at him. He looks so sad. Or happy.
He looks actually quite normal there.
yeah, it really does. He's a little scruffy looking for sure. But yeah, so the Manson case was really interesting. It was kind of all over the place. That's like one of those cases that will like live in infamy for like ever. Kind of like H.H. Holmes, or Lizzie Borden, or like crimes like that. Like I would like to include the Cleveland torso murders, but a lot of people just really don't know that case, as wild as it actually is. But I think that's one of those cases that will probably live on forever.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, like Manson will live on forever. Jack the Ripper, Ted Bundy, all those, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, all those names, thousands from years from now, they'll probably still be looking back and be like, what the fuck was wrong with America or the world back then?
They'll be like, what was wrong with mankind? They'll be like, well, how did these people like exist? Like, how did they even allow these people to exist? Like they're just gonna think like people were wild back then. Like how we like think of people like from like the 1700s, like just how crazy they were, like how they lived. They're gonna be looking at us the same way. They're like, these people were like wild. Like how did they even survive living in this time period?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, they'll look back on people like Dahmer and Gacy and Bundy and be like, why was this guy eating people? Why were these people killing people? And I'm sure it'll be thousands from years from now where there'll be like AI technology and robots running around and nobody killing anybody and everybody's just programmed to be the same.
Yeah, pretty much. It'll be like that movie of Tom Cruise, Minority Report, where it's like they just already know if you're going to kill somebody. It's like, hey, wait a minute, you're thinking about killing somebody? It's like, oh, we can't have that. And this is the last one, and I'm sure everybody recognizes Fred West and Rose West. Little crazy murderers. I think they mostly killed like young women, right? Like prostitutes and girls.
Yeah, actually, they killed one of their kids actually and buried her under the porch or something like that, where they would have barbecues. And I always thought that was super crazy that, like that case is so interesting that they, would abuse their own kids too, of course, and yeah, that case is just still mind blowing to me. I think that'll be one years from now too that people will look back on and be like, what the hell was wrong with this couple? I mean, because they would abuse their own kids, killed one of their own kids, and buried their child on their property and walked over her, skeletal remains like every
Yeah, like
day. And
every day, yeah, having a barbecue over their dead child. But I think there was like a lot of like hate and like jealousy, I think, from Rose West over like this daughter. Like I think they just didn't really get along very well, from my understanding. And so like I think that's maybe why like they killed her, isn't it? It's like that their relationship was so strained or something.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I mean, I don't know if they looked at it as like being in relationships with them, but it was definitely, they were definitely being abused on the regular. And I know that the kids have had a hard life even after, he died and she's still in prison. I want to say one of the kids either passed away or committed suicide, one or the other, and I
Mm.
can't imagine, going through that, being abused as a kid and then finding out later on that my parents killed my sibling and how many other, people.
Yeah, it's like your parents are serial murderers. Like that's kind of like a hard pill to swallow there, for sure.
And in the
And
UK, it's a lot more rare in the UK for, serial homicide cases. That's why like Ian Brady and Dennis Nilsson is so big over there. But if you threw them in America, I'm sure they'd be another, Philip Jablonski or whoever just forgotten about.
right, yeah, there'd be no names because like over there, like you said, it's just such a rare occurrence. And I think they're just so much more dignified in the sense that like when they see crimes committed like comparable to Jeffrey Dahmer, they're just like, oh my God, like I didn't know that such monsters even existed. And like they put them on this pedestal of just like gruesome, like horrific mentality, like they're just like, oh, this is like the worst of the worst that's ever existed. But like you're right, like if they were over here, people wouldn't think twice about them, honestly. So it's
Right.
kind of fun. But yeah, like and then uh Fred West afro there, it's magnificent. But
I always thought that he kind of looked like a skinny, shorter Andre the Giant kind of.
yeah, he kind of does. Or you know what he really looks like? He looks like a homicidal Richard Simmons. Like where
Yeah, I
they
can
do
definitely
do
see
all the
that.
little, yeah. He's got that little chip or that little separate part of his tooth going on there. I mean, they're definitely very like creepy in their own right. But I think he was like a sexual sadist, right? Like he was just crazy about like prostitutes and just and I think like just violence when it came to sex. So
Right, right. Yeah, especially towards his kids as well. I mean, not like they had killed their one daughter and did God knows who what to their other children and
yeah,
whoever else that like felt their wrath and came in their path.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah, that's one of those cases that'll probably live on definitely in the UK for like a long time. Just probably like the John Regional Christie one. Like if you probably ask anybody in England, they probably know that name. I would say that he's probably comparable to maybe like Ed Gein over there because like that's kind of like what they fashioned him as like over there is like this like creature that they never knew could exist, like this Jeffrey Dahmer type figure. So yeah, so
Right.
it's interesting, like the differences compared to here and the UK, just like how they see crime, like vastly different, like through maybe well we see it more through like rose covered lenses compared to them, I would say. So yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for giving me your time today and showing me a little bit of your collection. And it was pretty interesting and it gave me a little bit of a new, perspective on press photos.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I have plenty more. Yeah, I have a lot of other things in the collection. If you're more than welcome to check them out anytime. So
Awesome. Well, we'll have to do it again in the near future and we'll definitely do something again. Maybe we'll find some more, murderabilia to talk about and some cases to cover.